Brilliant.
Thank you.
So, morning. I hope you're well. I'm Julian Payne. I'm the creative director at De La Rue. I'll explain who we are and what they are in just a minute. I get my. Oh, I see. This is going to be interesting. Cash. It's a funny one, and what I thought would be interesting to talk about is how that plays into the global sustainability agenda. I think it's quite fundamental, actually, for a couple of reasons. One, cash enables every citizen to partake in the global economy, rich or poor. You don't need to buy a device, you don't need a bank account, it's there for everybody. And its ubiquity and facility, as I'll try and explain, allows everybody to buy, sell and trade, which is quite important. And it remains the world's most inclusive financial transaction method, which in itself is quite interesting. So I'll give you some facts on that, but before we start, a bit about who De La Rue are. We're a 200-year-old British company. We design currency and also passports and many other secure documents, but currency for over 140 countries. That's about 390 different denominations, different types of notes. We design every part of the note, so the paper or the plastic, the ink, the foils, the holograms. Everything happens inside the design studio that I run. And it gives us a real privileged position to see how economies are developing across the world, how people use cash across the world, and the different ways that people use cash across the world, which brings us back into our sustainability agenda. We're very used to paying with contactless or digital payments here in the UK. But one of the sort of startling facts is that 85% of all transactions globally are still conducted with hard currency, so coins or banknotes. And you can see from the chart here, even in Europe, actually, still quite a large slug of transactions are conducted in cash. Germany is about 75% still a cash economy. But the most interesting areas are, for example, Africa, Asia, both developed and developing, where cash is the predominant transaction method. Which means for us as designers, we're thinking about use cases, we're thinking about who's using it, and also from a sustainability point, who is using that money and why they're using the money. Cash is growing globally by about 4%, which is linked to GDP growth. And in developing economies such as Africa and Asia, that becomes sort of apparent. I've been to some of these places. So in the chart, we've got Indonesia, Mozambique, Angola, Samoa, and what's interesting is who buys and who sells. And in many of these countries that operate large informal markets, the people selling and the people buying are women. And yet, if you look at stats on who owns bank accounts, or in this chart shows who owns mobile phones, 80% plus will be owned by men. And therefore you can start to think about the ubiquity and importance of cash to people that might be outside of the financial inclusion circuit at the moment. And whilst it's one of those global goals that the UN have signed up to get more financial inclusion, at the moment, cash is the way that women and other people outside of these sort of privileged networks gain access to the economy. And it's really important because they are doing the buying and they are doing the selling in many of these developing economies. The way we break down and talk about sustainability is under these three headings, which I think are sort of SEG, which is sort of a common way of looking at it. The social aspect, environmental aspect, and governance. And from a banknote perspective, social, I'll come back to that point I made at the start, which is it's for everybody. You do not need to buy a mobile phone, you do not need access to a bank account. Cash is there to serve everybody, of every colour, every kind of ability or disability, everywhere in the world. And we have to design it in that way. Everyone has a stake in their currency. It's also quite emotional. If you change something on the banknote, as we've even seen in the UK, reactions to different banknote designs create a big emotional bow wave. Not enough women on notes, it doesn't represent my culture, it doesn't represent my ethnicity. These are debates that happen all over the planet. And that's because banknotes are for everybody, and as a designer you really have to think about that. And then the last one under social is, of course, it's got to be usable. You need to be able to tell that it's a £5 note or a £10 note or a €50 note. It has to be distinct, so you have to build that into the design. Secondly, more and more design for banknotes is becoming towards a more sustainable design. How do you make them last longer? And that's self-interest for the central banks. They want to pay less and they want their notes to last longer, like any product. But equally, back to that idea that it's owned by everybody, a taxpayer pays for a banknote. More and more societies are asking, what happens to the banknotes when their lives are over? Are they recycled? Are they burned? Are they shredded? And I'll talk a bit about that later. And then lastly, it's around governance. Cash banknotes are critical national infrastructure. The United States had some terrible weather in the last year, hurricanes, snowstorms. All the ATMs went down. What did they fall? And digital payments went down. They fell back to cash, delivering cash, going to the bank, getting cash out. That's a Western economy. Many developing economies still wholly rely on cash. Therefore, their economies rest upon it. And therefore, the trust, the ability to authenticate, and the integrity of that design has to be second to none. So from a designer's perspective, a banknote designer's perspective, we kind of operate in what I call 5 dimensions. The first one is thinking about end users, and the maxim that Google coined years ago now around get the end user right and all else follows is absolutely true in banknotes. And if you're designing for Samoa, or you're designing for Mozambique, or you're designing for the United Kingdom, all of which we do, each of those drives very different use cases, different durability characteristics, different security threats, all of which you need to consider. Secondly, there's no excuse for a dull banknote, but there are plenty of them out there, I have to say. But the technology we have and the design tools that we have these days enables really inspired design. And what you want are creatives, like you guys do in fashion, that look beyond the obvious, right? And you're looking for, it's all the hidden details in banknotes that make them sort of enjoyable narratives. The last 3, security, material and technology and manufacture, are kind of 3 sides of or 3 corners of the same triangle. Integrated security comes from a banknote designer being able to understand what the technologies are she's trying to combine. So that might be the polymer, it might be the ink, it might be the foil, and then the integration gives the security, because that makes it very difficult to counterfeit. It also makes it last longer, it gives it better life. But that means the designer has to have deep understanding of the materials that she's using. And then lastly, manufacture is critical, because as you guys, I think there's real parallels with fashion and what we do, because we tailor our designs for our countries, but actually then make them in billions of pieces. So, like a 10-year, for the UK, there will be billions of banknotes made by the time they change the design in 10 or 20 years' time, whenever they think about doing it the next time round. And the security comes from repeatability. And the cost down and keeping costs under control also comes from repeatability. So the designer has to think about those aspects as well. So it's about insight, and I'm going to talk about designing for society. I quite like this. This feels like a little roller, I think. When we look at bank, and this is typical rather than specific. Public, retailers, guys that run shops or markets, they are your first line of defence, and that's where the banknote will spend most of its life, in those people's hands, crossing across counters, being used in the markets, moving amongst traders, and that's what you're really designing for. From a counterfeit perspective, they're the guys that will spot the counterfeit first. Equally, from a durability perspective, that's where banknotes live and die and will be put through their hardest tests. Then you have another layer of commercial banks, and obviously the cash in transit guys, so people that move cash around the country, put it into ATMs. You're designing for them as well, because they want efficiency in the design. And then lastly, central banks and governments will often have an opinion on, is the taxpayers' money being spent in the right way? But there are loads of subgroups as well. So in the public, some countries, they have a big tourist influx that you're designing for tourists. Others I've mentioned earlier have large, what we call informal market economies. So they don't have high streets like we have here. You're in sort of a Mozambique or an Angola perspective, where most of the economy is conducted in street markets, and shopping is done in a very different way. More and more we're using data to design, and what these charts show, let me sort of explain this one. This is 4 years, 1, 2, 3, 4, and in this country they've got 6 different denominations. So it's each blue, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And what this shows is the note life on the left-hand side. So 1.5 years up to, or half a year up to 4 years in length. What you can see in that country is that the life cycle of the lower notes was much less. They were dying quickly, essentially, in the first couple of years. Then the note life zooms up, and that's because they changed to polymer. And those are sort of the data points we're looking for, we're designing to, because from that you can draw out your design strategy for the customer, for the country. Every country is different. It's odd to say, but how they use cash can be remarkably different. Even neighbours in a similar sort of environmental zone will treat money in a very different way. Also, we look at what's the various volume between denominations. Often we see, particularly in countries like this one has, as a inflation issue, the highest denomination, so let's say, hypothetically, a £50 note. We have some inflation in this country, becomes more and more a note you see every day. We don't really see them today, do you? You don't see them on the counter. But this country's got that issue. So you're thinking about a design strategy. It means you don't need to design it with all of the expensive security features you have today, you want to think about a different design strategy for it. So we look at data, circulation data quite a lot. More and more, we're looking at ways to measure the design. 10 years ago, so not very long ago, a design for a banknote would be a conversation between a company like us and a central bank governor, generally a bloke, and he would say, yeah, I want that design, and that's what would happen. Whereas actually what you're finding is, utility and facility and understanding sustainability of the note is driving far more measures and thinking about who you're designing for. And folk like me who come from product backgrounds come in saying, why aren't you designing for end users? And so we look at this is a set of measures proposed by the Dutch National Bank, but really, really useful and similar to what we use at Delarue. So you think about how do you recognise value, can you spot it, how do you check authenticity, the identity of a note. So in this country you go, yeah, £10 Jane Austen, £5 Winston Churchill. If you're using a euro with all its arches and doors, could you tell the difference between a €5 and a €50? The Dutch can't, apparently. They did a test, 85% of them could not tell the difference. So you've got to think about the identity. And what's interesting, so it's from the lovely Dutch who I adore, but sustainability becomes a measure, right? And that's quite interesting. That's a huge change. So how long do the notes last? Are we getting the right taxpayer value from it? So the two are definitely linked, but we want ethical banknotes, right? Because we own it. We're paying for it as taxpayers. Therefore, we have a stake in what happens to them afterwards. So I think that's a really interesting move. Style, we all talk about style a lot. It's really important for societies because that's how you recognise your currency. Well, often when we do tests between for countries where you go, here's your currency and here's somebody else's, they intimately understand the detail of their own currency, but find it quite difficult, perhaps getting quite as enthusiastic about other people's, and therefore style choices for banks are really important. On your left, you'll see sort of the more, I guess, traditional banknote styles, the US dollar. Perhaps the pound sterling follows that, but this blue one, what I call classical here, is still the world's most popular banknote layout. You see it in Malaysia, you see it in the Falkland Islands, you see it in Australia, you see it in New Zealand, and it's not just because some of those are sort of ex-British territories, it just is a nice layout that people use a lot. In the middle, you see countries or issuing authorities updating their design. So they try and hold on to the past a little bit, but then update it either because there's a technology change or they just want to refresh the design and they want to look at it in a different way. And then on the hard, your right, real radical leaps. So either using bold colour, and you see reds and pinks, purples, yellows used far more in banknote designs, all over the note, really bright, unlike our muted sort of duller European colours. Or they hire artists, and we work with a lot of artists all over the world to design different types of banknotes, and they'll come up with the concepts, but then we turn it into a product. And that is completely breaking every banknote design rule historically, which is really exciting for us because they're redefining what banknotes look like. So here's an example of a style which some of us will be familiar with, which is the British or English pound note, Bank of England pound note, 1960 through to 2016. Pretty much the same style, that classical style all the way through. But it's a conscious decision. And this is about a global currency, sterling. So it's got trust, it's got tradition, it's got a heritage and stability that they're trying to reflect in the design. What's interesting about the Bank of England is underneath that very similar style is a radical technology change. They were the first bank to introduce anti-copy inks. They then introduced holography into the design, and then most recently polymer and foil. So they've kept the style the same while radically changing the technology choices, which is quite interesting. Whereas other banks do far more radical designs but keep the technology the same. I'll scurry on. One of the other things I love about looking at money and thinking about that informal market side of things is how do people use the money? How are they folding it and storing it? And whilst we're very used to using money in Europe and putting it in our wallet and keeping it safe, most of these countries, and again, thinking about who does the shopping and who does the buying, typically it's women, they are folding it and storing it in all sorts of ways. So in Mozambique, they fold it into tiny little squares. This lady in the pink top, tiniest little squares you could imagine, and tie it into a capulana, which is a sort of a sash they wear over their dresses. And that's how they store money. In Samoa and many other places, they'll tuck it in their bras. And again, I don't say this as a joke, polymer is not comfortable in a bra, and they prefer paper. And these are sort of real design conversations I have with central bankers about how to design money. Or they fold it up and stick it into pockets, scrunch it up if they're market traders. Fish markets in the Seychelles present all sorts of interesting design challenges. So, these are the things you have to think about when you're designing, because this is about durability. So back to that sustainability, how do you make banknotes last longer? You have to think about how they're being used. They're not going to be kept pleasantly in a wallet. They'll be stored in shoes and other places. The other thing, you want people to be able to tell what it is, right? And back to retailers and the general public, you can tell often people will tell by the touch. And your thumb or your finger can detect down up to about a micron, which is it's just lower than the width of your hair on your head. So it's about half a micron, I think, is your hair on your head. Whereas your eye can only see a bit bigger than that. So your touch will give a note away before your eyes will see it. And therefore, tactility has always been a feature of banknotes. The raised ink, what we call intaglio ink, has always been part of it, still is. But more and more with these plastic notes, you can put embossing into them. So you get, for the partially sighted or the blind, you can create braille. It's not braille, but it's braille-like signatures on it. So each note has a distinct feel or tactile emboss. Equally, colour separation is really important. Hot and cold colours alternating through the series. So in the UK, we have blue to brown to purple, really clear colour sets. It's not true in all parts of the world. US dollar is the classic example of everything looking a bit the same. But we absolutely recommend that. And then also clear denominations. So use of negative space and positive space with the note, different sizes of numbers, because you're not just dealing with everything's in daylight and everyone can see perfectly. Even a perfectly sighted person in a nightclub or a street market at night might struggle to see what's on the note, and you want it bold and you want it clear, as well as people with a range of visual impairments from colour blindness all the way through to completely blind. Ooh. There's a quicker way to do it. I don't have to roll. There we are. Okay, so governance. It's a specialist trade, right? So from a supply chain side, there's a small number of people that make very specialist equipment for people like me. And from the software we use through to the machines that we print on and put foils on. And therefore there's high barriers to entry. And plus to operate that machinery, it takes some years to learn how to do it. The technology, we spend millions a year on materials development, ink development, optical physics, that's a fancy word for saying holography. Adhesion, you would not believe how much time we spend worrying about glue. I think we're not alone as an industry in that issue, but that is massive, as well as specialist inks, be that magnetic inks you can read in IR, inks that you can read in under ultraviolet. And then it's all about authentication. So how do people read notes? Can they authenticate them? Are they secure? Do they trust them? That's for the public. Plus there's a range of features we designed for the banks themselves, what we call the teller. So if you're a specialist, you can read it. Or even forensic tests that you do in a lab. All of that is built into the banknotes. So the first step is how do you build a narrative? And that's really important for educating the public. And you think about the Jane Austen note here, you've got Winchester Cathedral, you've got her quill, you've got the book, the writing desk, all of these things you can kind of pick up and go, if I'm looking at the note, what do I look for? How do I trust that this is the note? How do I know it's the new note? Equally, this is an example from the Seychelles. They used their theme was around their endemic biodiversity. This little green tree frog. He appears here in ultraviolet. He's in the litho, same one. So under ultraviolet, he's this colour, and in normal light, he's here. He appears in the intaglio ink, but he also appears in the thread. You can see him here. He is blown up, so you can see him poking out. So Maud can tell Pauline, have you seen the frog in the thread? Have you spotted it? And it's nice intrigue because the public are looking at the note. It's a bit of fun, but it serves a really serious purpose, which is people know where to look for the features that they can tell the money's real, and that's about designing for society, designing for governance. Layering. This is a Scottish banknote, Bank of Scotland. And you can see all of the different security, I'm not going to go through them all, but all the different security features from the windows in the building. So they've got plastic notes like we have. But here we designed it so you put windows in the windows. So that's quite a tricky thing to do. Threads in it, different embossing, different uses of the numeral 10. It's just like layering everything together. That designer, she's bringing all of that stuff together into the design to make it whole, to make it durable, and to make it secure. Oh. We also talk about material science. Our designers work all the time with the scientists. This was microtext, which is these tiny little dots here, has been around for a long time. Ultraviolet inks have been around for a long time, but combining them together is something new. And we did that about a year ago with designers working with the material scientists, because you want it to be clear and intuitive. And you can see this moth shape. In normal light, all you see is the moth, whereas you put UV on it, all you'll see is this pattern that you're seeing now. And that's part of that would be for a shopkeeper. He puts it under the little UV lamp. Sometimes they check it out for you. They would be able to see that. A bit about the environment. Durability is sort of the key for us in terms of sustaining long banknote life. And there have been sort of strategies around this for as long as the arc in banknote design, because all central banks want their notes to last as long as possible before they fall apart. And in paper, that's often been done through clever use of ink. So I've got banknote design manuals going back to the 1950s, which are very plummy and with shocking descriptions of the world. But in it, you've got banknotes saying we should use intaglio ink. So that's the heavy black raised tactile ink on both sides of the note. That makes it last longer. All varnishes are used a lot on inks, on paper notes as well. But the big change has been the introduction of plastic, so polymer banknotes, which has radically changed the durability. And you can see in this example here with this country here, paper notes lasting to a year, between a year and a half. They switched to polymer and they're up to about 3 times the life. And that means the notes are lasting longer in circulation, and that's better for the public, it's better for the public finances and the purse, and for uses and abuses such as this. But what happens to plastic? And given the debates we're having on plastics in the last few years, one of the things when we launched our polymer notes was to ensure that we, one, understood the environmental impact, and two, understood the recycling capacity, which I'll talk about in a minute. So first of all, we work with a company called ThinkStep, who developed the GABI tool. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. It's a global standard. It's used by a whole bunch of multinationals for measuring their both their CO2, but also their primary energy demand, i.e., how recyclable is this product once it is recycled, essentially. This chart here shows the CO2 impact. And on your left-hand side is the environmental impact of paper, and on the right-hand side is the impact of polymer, plastic notes. And what's interesting here, when we did the study, is the processing of cotton. All paper banknotes are made of cotton, by the way. So it's the processing of cotton from where they are in the fields, generally in the United States and other parts of the world, into paper that has the biggest CO2 impact, because that's a highly industrialised process. And there's not a lot you can do about it, whether you're buying cotton for clothes or you're buying cotton for banknotes. That's just the way it is. Whereas for polymer, when you're just melting some plastic and then extruding it into sheets, the manufacturing impact is much lower. What fascinates me about this chart as well, though, is the green block. What is the green block? You probably can't read it from where you're sitting. That is the CO2 impact of ATMs. Over the life, and we measure this over the life cycle of the banknote. So this is from a banknote being made to a banknote being destroyed. So it could last probably 3 or 4, maybe 5 years in that process. And for people that sort of say, our cash is environmental impact of cash is really high. I think ATMs, that's electricity. Electricity that runs the same thing. Server farms runs digital currencies, all of those things. Until we've sort of figured out that one, I think cash is still a better play. So ATM is still a huge impact on the environmental impact of hard currency, but even higher, I would argue, for digital currencies. So we keep monitoring that, and we keep watching that, and seeing how we can further reduce that with our supply chain. What about recycling? Right from the start, so Bank of England obviously use polymer. They're great in the sense that they worry about sustainability as well. And they were saying, if we're going to go polymer, we need recycling options from day one. We can't traditionally paper banknotes are shredded and set fire to. There's no way you can easily recycle them because of all the different interesting chemicals that go into the paper. Whereas polymer, you can essentially repurpose it under pressure, under heat, extract it. So you shred it, you turn it into what looks like hamster droppings, and then that can be remelted and put back into about 80% of mould-injected plastics. And so we have this company we work with called Yes. They do it, and amazingly, they'll take the banknotes free of charge from the central bank because they make their money on the recycling and then on what they sell. So it's a really nice, sustainable model, right? So the banks are under it's no extra cost to the bank. They can just give them away once they're shredded, so they're secure at that point. These guys melt them down, turn them into plant pots, pencils, and all sorts of other things. So it was really important that we had that from the start, and obviously they can be continually recycled within the supply chain thereafter. So I'm nearly out of time. So just to recap, it's about designing for society. So it enables everyone to partake in the global economy. It's about building the right governance around that, so the right levels of security, of trust, of public education and authentication. And if we're designing new technologies, we're thinking, as an industry, thinking much more about how do you recycle, what's the impact on society, because society are asking those questions. It's taxpayers' money. They want value for money. They want to know that these things are being managed in the right ways on behalf of the public purse, which is a great check and balance to have. Maybe not all corporates have the same sort of scrutiny, but we certainly do. So that's me. I'm done. Thanks.